there was a period of time in my life that I was looking for short-term rentals. I got a call from a guy. It was an estate situation. His parents had died. And as he talked to me on the phone about the property, I said, I don't think I want to appraise your property. And he said, well, how come? And I said, because I might want to buy it. I said, I don't want to
Yeah.
be your appraiser because I want to be a potential buyer. And I ended up not being the appraiser. To me, the $700 fee was not worth the trade-off. Just the opportunity to look at it as a potential buyer was worth more to me than the appraisal fee.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Everybody, welcome back to the Appraiser Coach podcast. Dustin Harris hanging out with my good friend, Mr. Tim Andersen, the appraiser's advocate. Tim, it's been a minute. Good to see you, my friend. You're looking great.
Dustin, thank you. It's always good to be with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with your listeners. Thank you.
Well, it's always good having you on. It's always great having you on. You're a wealth of knowledge, and as the listeners know, we like to do a little thing called Dear USPAP Instructor, where we bring on people that are much smarter than myself to answer questions from the audience. We're going to actually do one question from the listening audience, Tim, and then I've got a question for you after the break. So let's start with the first question from Tim to Tim, not the same Tim. This is a Tim S. We'll keep his last name confidential, but Tim says, I'm currently buying and flipping homes. I am sometimes asked to appraise homes where once I start the process, I find I might be interested in possibly buying it. Can I still appraise the property? Notice I said, can I, not should I? Tim, what say you?
Can you appraise the property? Yes, with proper disclosure. But again, the more important question is, should you? Now, USPAP and all ethics assume that you have no interest in the property. You are independent, impartial, and objective. So when you
Okay.
walk into this house and you go, wow, I know full well that this house is worth $300,000, but it's a real dumpster. So if I could buy it for 150, I can put 50 in it and make $100,000 fairly quickly. Good for you. That's great business. But the point is, you're not being independent, objective, and impartial. So you appraise it instead of 300, you appraise it for 200. And you have just accommodated yourself, which is part of the definition of bias. So can you do it? Yeah, you can do it with proper disclosure. But then as soon as you disclose it, that discloses a potential interest, which discloses a bias. And then, well, you've got to disclose the interest. Does that disclosure do away with the bias? Chances are it doesn't. So as a result, can you? Yeah. Are you physically capable of it? Which is what can means. Yes, you are. Ethically, morally, now we're into some gray area. And only you can answer that question, because only you, Tim, are able to look at it and say, okay, I'm interested in the house. When I get done with the appraisal, I'll come back to them. I'll say, hi, remember me? I'm the appraiser. I really would like to buy your house. And I know what I said it was worth, but that was a retail value. And I've got to offer you a wholesale value because I've got to make a buck in the flip. Okay. Yeah, you have every right to do that. But should you do that? So there is no answer to your question. There is your answer to the question, Tim. And if you could sleep at night and live with that, jump up and down on it, go for it. If you think that that just doesn't meet the definition of an appraiser, independent, impartial, objective, then no, don't do it.
So technically, Tim, you're saying that this other Tim could move forward, even doing so without a USPAP violation, as long as he feels like he can still remain independent, impartial, and okay.
Sure. Although
but the optics are bad, right?
Well, yeah. Again, we've done this before. You walk into Caesar's Palace, walk up to a pit boss and say, hello, I'm going to play 21 and I'm going to cheat. So I've disclosed it to you, and therefore you can't hold it against me. No,
Yeah.
no, that won't fly. So
You got
just
it. So Tim, what would be your recommendation then for Tim, where he walks into a situation, he takes on the assignment, not having any idea that this is going to happen, but as he walks into the property, he says, "Huh, interesting. I'm doing this for a particular purpose. Maybe it's a foreclosure, maybe it's the potential for sale by owner, and by golly, I might actually be interested in this." What recommendations, not USPAP, but what business recommendations would you give Tim if he finds himself in that situation?
you'd probably want to retain a real estate broker to go around and look for you and
Mm,
find properties that can be purchased for less than retail value for whatever reason. That's perfectly legitimate. That way, you're not walking into the house and saying, "Oh, well, it's a $300,000 house, but I'm going to appraise it for two because I want to buy it."
mhm,
That way, you don't have a problem. The broker brings you the opportunity. You look at it, and go, no, or you look at it and go, "Oh, yeah, let's jump all over this."
right.
That way, you're clear. You're absolutely clear, and there, quite frankly, are people who do that.
Mhm,
So if you're in the position to invest long term, and by long term I'm talking 20 to 75 years, real estate's the best way to go. And if somebody can help you in that endeavor by showing you the properties that you can buy for less than market value, great, do it.
mhm.
But if you're an appraiser, then you have a set of ethics that you have already chosen to follow, and you have pretty much given up any opportunity to say, "Well, I'm going to take off my appraiser's hat." Well, no. If you walk in the front door with your appraiser hat on, it's pretty much nailed to your head. There's
Mm.
not much you can do about it. Whereas if you don't walk into that front door, if a broker walks into the front door, looks at it and goes, "Yeah, I better get with Dustin on this one. This may be one he's interested in," then you're fine.
The other option, of course, as a business owner, correct me if I'm wrong here, Tim, is to back out of the assignment. And I've actually had that situation. There was a period of time in my life that I was looking for short-term rentals. I got a call from a guy looking. It was an estate situation. His parents had died, not at the same time, but his last parent had just passed, and the siblings were looking to divide up a property. And as he talked to me on the phone about the property, I said, I don't think I want to appraise your property. And he said, well, how come? And I said, because I might want to buy it. I said, I don't want to
Yeah,
be your appraiser because I want to be a potential buyer. And I ended up not being the appraiser. To me, the $700 fee was not worth the trade off. I didn't end up buying the property, but just the opportunity to look at it as a potential buyer was worth more to me than the appraisal fee.
Yeah, that's perfectly legit because then you're not functioning as an appraiser. You're functioning as a principal purchaser.
Yep. Yep. For sure. Tim, thank you. When we get back, I have a question for you, not USPAP related, but nonetheless, I think it'll be fun to play out here. First, want to pause, folks, and remind you that we're sponsored by a couple of great programs. Of course, OREP being the E&O of choice. And by the way, I've had to call on my insurance company recently on an issue, and I can tell you, folks, that they are there immediately. Isaac and the team over there at OREP have been absolutely phenomenal. One of the great things about OREP is it's not just insurance, it's also a lot of side benefits, including free continuing education. A couple of those done by our good friend Mr. Tim Andersen, meaning he was the voice and the author of the continuing education class. Absolutely fabulous, wonderful, and entertaining altogether. Check it out by going to orep.org. That's OREP.org. We, of course, are sponsored by TrueTracks. TrueTracks is the ability to be able to help support your adjustments. Folks, it's not an end all be all. It is a help, it is a support to what you're doing, and it makes your life much easier. The cost is so minimal compared to the time it's going to save you and the ability to have that robust work file. Check them out by going to truefootage.tech/tools. Again, it's truefootage.tech/tools. Welcome back to the program. Mr. Tim Andersen, the appraiser's advocate. Tim, You perform quite a service for appraisers now that you're not actively appraising. Tell us a little bit more about that because it's really twofold. It's before you get in trouble and after you get in trouble, right?
Right. You were thoughtful enough to mention that some of my classes are available through OREP. Please understand that I also do bar mitzvahs and weddings too. Um,
Of course you do.
no, the issue, Dustin, is because I don't appraise anymore. I work with appraisers who are in trouble with their states, or more importantly, who don't want to be in trouble with their states. And
Mm,
I review reports. I recommend courses they take. We do tutoring. I do a lot of tutoring, and do some mentoring. I work with a couple of states doing mentoring, or with private students doing mentoring. And I'd much rather I'd much rather work with an appraiser before the state comes calling than after the state comes calling, because the at that point the state's already said, "Well, you're guilty." Now there's
mm.
been no trial, but there's been I should excuse me I shouldn't say trial, I should say hearing. But the state isn't going to send you that letter. Hey, we had nothing else to do, so we figured we'd send you a snotty letter. No, it doesn't work
Mm,
that way.
right.
Whereas if you work with me before you get involved with the state, then maybe we can make it so you don't get that snotty letter.
Well, stay tuned, everybody, because at the end of the program, I'm going to, or have Tim tell you how to get a hold of him. And trust me, as one who has availed himself of the services that Tim has to offer, highly, highly recommended. The value is incredible, off the charts. So stay tuned for that. Tim, got a question for you. So let me set this up. Recently took a USPAP class. It was a live class with other individuals, and we did case studies. So we broke out in small sections with 3 or 4 other appraisers in a room, if you will, and brought up some case studies. I don't remember the case study specifically that we were studying, but I do know the topic of the effective date came up. And one of the things that was mentioned during that conversation was in utilizing comparables. How far back can you go to get a comparable? That's not my question for you, Tim. My question for you is how far forward can you go? Let me explain. I mentioned during that I had done an appraisal recently where I had used a sale that had closed 2 days after the effective date. The effective date was the date of my inspection. The report was turned in 3 days after my inspection, and the perfect comparable, by the way, well, not perfect, but very good comparable that I used had closed 1 day before the signature date. So 2 days after the effective date, 1 day before the signature date. And when I mentioned that, Tim, I got taken to the woodshed because everybody else in that room said, you cannot use a sale that closed 2 days after the effective date. So I'm not necessarily I'm not bringing you onto the program to support my case. If you disagree, I would love to hear that. But my case is, or my claim is, you can use a sale 2 days after the effective date. There's nothing in USPAP. There's nothing anywhere that I know of that says you can't. What say you?
I would love to argue with you, Dustin, but I can't because you're right. First of
Thank
all,
you, Tim. Can I
the
record that and play that for my wife?
sure. Well, no, no. You're if when it comes to your wife, you're wrong. You're
Okay,
married.
yeah, that's true.
Just the
That's
way
true.
it is. Okay. Um, in USPAP, the entire section on the sales comparison approach is a whole 27 words long. It
Mm,
doesn't even address the issue. Fannie Mae, and I'm going to use Fannie Mae, but generically. Fannie
okay.
Mae does not address the issue except to say it's up to the appraiser to choose the comps. Now, if you're in a really hot market, that would probably not be the step to take. Whereas right now, markets are not, well, some markets are not terribly hot.
Yeah.
So the fact that you said, hey, this thing was under contract, it was pending, it was 2 days away from the closing table, the deal was done, the deed just hadn't transferred yet. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Now, I would have a problem with that if you didn't disclose it. Because let's say when I was a broker many, many years ago, I remember we were all sitting around figuring, well, okay, we're going to go on vacation with this commission check and we're going to buy a new truck and blah, blah, blah. And then the buyer died the day before the closing.
Mm.
So, uh, as Robert Burns said, the best laid plans of mice and men. So,
Yeah.
using a sale that occurred 2 days after, no, that's perfectly okay with proper disclosure. And then
Okay.
proper wait. No, it hadn't
Hmm.
closed. So,
Well, no, it had. It had.
oh,
No, it closed. It
but
closed. It hadn't
the
closed when I did the inspection, but it closed before I turned the report in.
okay, then you're perfectly fine.
Okay.
You're absolutely perfectly fine with proper disclosure. And
Yeah.
for someone to say you can't do that has no basis, in fact. Now, it has basis in superstition, and the
Mm.
superstition is somebody was in a class once, and somebody said, "Well, what about the?" And the instructor gave some answer, and when the instructor shouldn't have. And for some reason, instead of investigating it on the appraiser's own and determining if that answer was indeed correct, the appraiser just took it as gospel. And that's basically to accept somebody else's belief blindly without examining it yourself critically is basically
Mm.
superstition. And you've told the story about, you have to cut the ends off the meat before you can
That's
cook it.
exactly what I was gonna bring up. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I
well,
was thinking about.
okay,
We come up with these
yeah,
ideas and we think they're gospel truth, and they're just lore.
yeah. Well, that's what I call superstition.
Mm.
So, to say, well, it wasn't legit because it was the day before. uh, how do you know it wasn't legit? Did you verify it? Unless you pick up the phone and talk to somebody about it, you don't know how legit it is. In fact,
Mhm.
uh, well, it's an MLS. I don't need to verify it. Well, MLS lies.
Mm.
Okay. Maybe not intentionally, but MLS lies. And
Maybe
you have
not.
to, and maybe not, maybe intentionally. But remember,
Yeah.
MLS is meant to sell houses. It is not meant to analyze markets. So we all look at, you're very deeply involved in AI. And everybody, AI is terrible. You can't use it. It hallucinates and blah blah blah. And the MLS doesn't. Hello.
Yeah.
Let's come to the 21st century and drink from the fountain of truth.
Mhm.
Yeah, MLS hallucinates. Okay, because it's meant to sell real estate. It is not made to analyze markets. We have the higher calling. So to say AI is terrible may be true.
Mm.
To say MAI, to say the MLS is never false is
Mm.
also superstition.
Mhm.
Okay? Now, it's a great place to start, but you still got to pick up the phone and say, well,
Yeah.
did this sell for
Verify.
50?
Yeah.
And they say, oh, yeah, it sold for 450. Okay. Was there a mortgage involved? Oh, yeah. The seller took back a 1% mortgage interest only for 99 years. No, it didn't
Right.
sell for 450. It sold for
Right.
a whole lot less. That's called cash
Mm.
equivalency. And you say, oh, I never do cash equivalency adjustments. And my response is, why?
Mm.
And usually they look at me or there's silence on the other side of the phone. And I say, well, that's your choice. But then in the same vein, you can choose to run stop signs and you can choose not to pay your real estate taxes or not to pay your income taxes.
Mm.
But somewhere down the road, there are going to be consequences.
Well, Tim, I'll tell you the argument I made in the class was, show me in USPAP where I can't use a sale that closed 2 days after the effective date. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. It's not there, right?
There is nothing in USPAP directly or indirectly addressing that issue.
Okay. And then the other argument was show me in Fannie Mae. And of course, somebody in the class said, well, yeah, it's there. Fannie Mae doesn't let you use comps that have sold after the effective date. And I said, okay, well, show me. Obviously, time didn't permit for them to find that. So um, maybe it's
And
there, but
they could have had an infinity and they couldn't have found it because it's not there.
Well,
In fact,
the other argument was, and they did make a good argument on this side, and but I had a good rebuttal. The argument on the other side was, well, my client would never allow me to do that, and I said, well, then you work for dumbass clients.
well, that's also an assignment condition, which has
Mm,
nothing to do with USPAP or nothing to
right.
do with the Fannie Mae selling guide. And again, I'm using that generically.
Well,
Besides,
yeah,
and it's not up to the client to tell the appraiser which comps to use, because as soon as this appraiser goes, oh, okay, I'll use another comp, the appraiser has given up independence, impartiality, and
exactly.
objectivity.
Exactly. No, and my point was, okay, so you would rather me use a sale that's an 11 and a half months old that is, adjusted at 100+% versus a model match that sold 2 days after the effective date. And literally someone in that breakout room said, yeah.
They're wrong.
Okay.
They're
Thank
wrong.
you, Tim. Tim, you're always right. I love you, my friend. Thank you for being on. I promised that I'd give you an opportunity to do a little plug here at the end. How do people get a hold of you if, and they should, by the way, want to take advantage of your great knowledge and help them to either get prepared so they can more bulletproof their appraisal reports, or if they do find themselves in trouble, reach out for a little advice.
Ironically, as we're recording this, I have on my email a help from an appraiser who just got a nasty letter from Fannie Mae. So
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. Dustin, my email address is tim@theappraisersadvocate.com, and I will be happy to work with anyone who needs my help.
Well, we all do. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you being on. Till next time.
Dustin, thank you. My best to your family.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit TheAppraiserCoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.